In this video, I want to talk a little bit about this book that you will be reading, The Case Against Perfection by Michael Sandel. Sandel is, of course, the quite famous Harvard University philosophy professor, still living, at least at the time of this recording. In this video, I just want to talk a little bit about the overall scheme of the book and introduce you to some of the important things going on in chapter one. First of all, I think you're really going to enjoy this book. This is not a dry piece of philosophy in any way. I think that he is going to um, get you excited right from the very beginning in the first two or three pages with these fascinating stories. The one about the parents who want to ensure that their child is born deaf, and the controversy surrounding that case, and then the cat cloning service, and the moral and existential issues related to cat cloning. Um, I think you are also going to be very surprised at where this book goes. I was. Let me jump in. Let me dive in and actually read a little bit here. I'm going to start on page 6. I'm at the very bottom of page 6. Um, the last full paragraph, if you want to follow along. Some say cloning is wrong because it violates the child's right to autonomy. By choosing in advance the genetic makeup of the child, the parents consign her to a life in the shadow of someone who has gone before, and so deprive the child of her right to an open future. The autonomy objection can be raised not only against cloning, but also against any form of bioengineering that allows parents to choose to, pardon me, that allows parents to choose their child's genetic characteristics. According to this objection, the problem with genetic engineering is that designer children are not fully free. Even favorable genetic enhancements for musical talent, say, or athletic prowess, would point children toward particular life choices, impairing their autonomy and violating their right to choose their life plan for themselves. Well, indeed, I had considered that objection, and I thought this was going to be one of Sandel's primary objections in this book. It is not. He goes on to write, at first glance, the autonomy argument seems to capture what is troubling about human cloning and other forms of genetic engineering, but it is not persuasive for two reasons. First, it wrongly implies that, absent a designing parent, children are free to choose their physical characteristics for themselves. That's, of course, ridiculous. They nobody chooses their own genetic inheritance there. Second, even if a concern for autonomy explains some of our worries about made to order children, it can't explain our moral hesitation about people who seek genetic enhancements for themselves. Skipping down to the end of this paragraph, the moral quandary arises when people use such therapy not to cure a disease, but to reach beyond health, to enhance their physical or cognitive capacities, to lift themselves above the norm. Here, we're getting close to what I think is one of the primary objections that Sandel is going to raise. And he's hinting at a distinction here that he will make fully transparent around page 14. That is the distinction between remedy and enhancement. Or maybe I should say the distinction between the use of certain kinds of genetic technologies uh, for remedy as opposed to for enhancement. Pay attention to this distinction. It's certainly not the only important thing here in chapter 1, but it's one of the important concepts. And let this concept uh, stay with you, this distinction. Let this stay with you as you read through chapter 1, which I think is really fascinating. I think that will serve you well. Also, who knows? Who knows when that distinction might come up again? Wink, wink. You never know. I mean, there is you know a final exam, I think, in this course, and who knows? Uh, so, starting on page 10, Sandel talks about several of the uh, examples of kinds of bioengineering that's already possible. Um, Several of which are already being done. Uh, Talks specifically about muscle enhancement, memory enhancement, which is a really interesting section, by the way. And if you're a fan of the great film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, very interesting reference there. Height enhancement and sex selection, something that is not only possible, but something that is very easy to do in some cases now. In fact, with any child born via in vitro fertilization, it is possible. Um, let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Um, this bit about sex selection, for me, also brings up an interesting question about abortion. The question, for me, the issue that it raises is not one of whether abortions are, morally acceptable or religiously acceptable, but rather whether abortions for this one certain reason would be. So, one Bombay, India clinic has reported that of the 8,000 abortions it performed, all but one were for the purposes of sex selection. In other words, radiologists would travel around with their ultrasound machines. They would let expectant mothers know what the sex of their child was going to be. And in many cases, the child was aborted if the fetus was female. And many of us find this very objectionable, but articulating this specific reason is harder to it's just harder to articulate. But it seems to me that abortion here is being used as an instrument of sex discrimination. Anyway, very a lot of very interesting moral and religious, possibly, and human issues. Anyway, let me close the video this way. I'm just reading from page 24. This is the last 3 or 4 sentences of chapter 1. Sandel writes, "It is commonly said that enhancement, cloning, and genetic engineering pose a threat to human dignity. That is true enough, but the challenge is to say how these practices diminish our humanity. What aspects of human freedom or human flourishing do they threaten?" Interesting question as we go along. Well, I hope that you enjoy this book, and I will see you in the next video.